Oh yeah.
God say, give more power to the people.
Legal Matters family, today is another in our author talk series. From time to time, we have authors come on to tell us about the books that they have written. And this is a local author. She is Miss Cheryl Gordon Cofer. How you doing today, Cheryl?
I am well, Janice. How are you?
Am great. The pollen has gotten to me, so my throat's a little scratchy. But other than that, I'm okay.
Good.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. The book you have written is called Lessons Learned, a Teacher's Memoir. And I'll be completely transparent with you. When I first saw that you had written a book and it was all about teachers, I was sort of like, well, what's in it for me? Since I'm not an educator, is that anything that would interest me at all? And then sometime later, your children, who I'm Facebook friends with, posted for your birthday, hey, it'd be nice to wish my mom a happy birthday and buy a copy of her book as a birthday present to her. So I was like, okay, cool. I can do a birthday present for Cheryl.
Okay.
So I bought it and I read it over the holiday season, I think it was. And I found it really interesting. It's a quick read, and there's a lot to learn there aside from just how to educate children. There's a lot of other societal stuff in there. So we really appreciate you having written this book for our enjoyment and our knowledge. So before we get started talking about the book, though, we'd like to learn a little bit more about Cheryl. Who is she?
Well, there's really not much to me. I was born in Augusta. Um, my parents were Robert Flash Gordon, as he was known for, and Shirley Greer. I have one sister. I was married for over 40 years. I have two children. Uh, I attended T.W. Josie High School and Georgia Southern University. And I am a member of Carpentersville Baptist Church and the best sorority in the country, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. So that's me. And then I taught forever. I taught for 32 years in Augusta. Started teaching in the 80s, early 80s.
And your children, just let us know who your children are so they have some perspective.
Well, my daughter is Shanita Renee Cofer. She's known throughout the CSRA. She plays saxophone. And my son is Reginald G. Cofer, as you may have seen him on the Parade of Quartets. Um, with the G always stands for something. So that's basically my two
Okay.
B's.
And I think he pastors a local church, if that's
That's
not.
right. That's something new. I keep forgetting about that. Reginald became a pastor a little less than a year ago at Tremont Baptist Church on the corner of Wrightsville Road and 11th Street, and they are op- they are in they have church service every Sunday at 10 a.m.
Okay, very good. Because yeah, I'm sure that people who may not know you immediately, they know your kids. So I just wanted to get that. Just wanted to get that.
They're a little
And,
more they speak up a little more than I do. I let them do most of the talking.
and your husband was the Reginald Cofer, basketball player, MVP, all of that.
Yes, he
Okay.
was a force to be reckoned with in more ways than one.
Mhm.
So so missed.
Yes, I'm sure. I'm sure. Now that you shared that with us, I would also like to explore. Now, you said you went to Georgia Southern, and this was a while back. And now I look at Georgia Southern, and I think there are all these African American students there. But that was certainly not the case when you started.
No, that was not the case. In fact, I think all of the black students knew each other back then. According to the records, I was one of the first 500 to attend. and graduate one of the first 500 Black students to do that. And if I remember, my number is like 180 something. So it has changed a lot since then.
Yeah, that is a huge change.
Yes.
Okay. So, how did you decide to write lessons learned?
Well, I have never looked at myself as a writer, but when I started teaching in 1982, new teacher, fresh, thought I was going to conquer the world, but kept notes and lots of pictures on things that went well and things that maybe didn't go well, different situations and how they were handled. And I did this for over 30 years. And I mean, I have piles and piles of notes. And one day my mother was here and she found my notes and she started reading them and she said, Cheryl, this is so interesting. This is a book. I say, it's not a book. It's just notes. But she stayed on me. This was after I had retired. She stayed on me and insisted that I please put this into a book. She said, this could help so many teachers because you turned everything into something positive. So that was I retired in 2014 and it took me until 2020 to get that book written, just all those notes into a book. And probably have enough notes for 2 or 3 more books. But I had to, didn't know, couldn't figure out where to stop. So I started off talking about how, how I got the job. I just from the beginning, how I received my teaching job and my years at Copeland and how later when transitioned over to high school.
Let's talk about how you got the job because that was the first big shocker for me as I was reading the book. And I know getting a teaching job back then was harder than it probably is now because all the school systems have so many vacancies.
Yes.
But used a term, you said that some of the schools where you interviewed had already met their quota of Black teachers. And I was like, huh? They had set numbers? Tell me a little bit more about that.
And I didn't even fully understand it then, because I grew up doing well when I was a child. It was things were segregated, but I thought things had gotten better. But I went to school 4 years, and I was ready to conquer the world. And I got out. I just knew teaching would be an easy profession. My mother had been a teacher, my aunt, and I said, I know I'll be able to get a job. So I started interviewing that May. And when school started on day one, which was like close to the end of August, I had been on about 20 interviews. And every time a principal was interested in me, they said, we got an opening, but it's for a white teacher. And that just blew my mind. But back then they had so many, they had this formula where they had to have so many Black teachers and so many white teachers. And that year it just they had a surplus of Black teachers, but not enough white teachers. So I finally in October I got a teaching position because a Black teacher went back to work, but her certificate had expired and she had no desire to renew it. And that's how I was hired. I almost didn't get that because they wanted to hire a white person in that job. But the principal, who just happened to be white, he wanted me that bad. He said, I've been here 30 something years, give me a week and I'll have you hired. And that's how I ended up teaching.
Okay. So you went months and months without a job, somebody who was completely dedicated to the profession. So you went months looking for a teaching position, and because you weren't the right color for those jobs, you didn't get them.
That's exactly correct. Exactly correct.
You see, I never would have known. That's behind the scenes stuff. I never would have known. In fact, 1982, I'm trying to figure out where was I in 1982. I graduated from high school in 81. So I had just finished Richmond Academy. So I was a freshman in college in 82. So yeah, I had no clue that that was what was happening. So you get in, finally get your big break, you get into this first job. You were teaching at the elementary school level, is that right at that time?
Yeah. I, I landed a first grade position, which I had already decided I wanted to teach second grade. But when they told me the job was available, I took the first job that they would hire me in. So I taught first grade. I did that for 17 years. And then a pre-K position, they started doing pre-K in the school system. Used to didn't have that before the
Right.
nine. So the principal asked us to my paraprofessional and I would we start off the first pre-K program at Copeland. So I did that another I did that another few years. I stayed at Copeland 17 years total. So it was 12 in first grade and 5 in pre-K.
Little bitty people. And the reason I asked that is because my mother was a school teacher. I think she taught every grade between 1 and 7 at some point or another. Maybe with the exception of third, for whatever reason. I don't know why she didn't get a chance to hit that one because she hit all the rest of them. And she would always say, I didn't care for the little bitty ones because they couldn't read. She liked for them to come to her
I'm
knowing
knowing
a little
something.
something.
Yeah.
So she preferred the seventh graders, the sixth and seventh graders were her favorites.
I can definitely understand that. I think that age group was really good for me in my 20s because I just finished all those classes on math for teachers, reading for teachers, music for teachers. So you teach all of the subjects, and I was ready. So I loved it for that time. And but pre-K was sort of a big change because they were babies just leaving their it's the first time away from their mommies and daddies. They we had to do everything for them. But we that's what teachers do, take care. We had to tie shoes, wipe noses, make sure your clothes were snapped, and your butt zippers were zipped when you came out of the restroom. You have to take care of them like your own. And it was a lot of fun because those little babies take care of their teachers, and those parents did too. If you love those babies, those parents will love you and do whatever you want them to do and more. And when you got a teacher and a parent, that combination that work together, the sky's the limit for the child. All you have to do is say what you want. Say what you want. This child's not doing this. Oh, he's not. Well, let me work on that. If that parent knows you care, it makes your job easier.
Okay. One of the things that you focus on in the book is the evolution of the students. You start in the early 80s working with the little bitty ones, and then later on you transition up to the older students. But as you were talking about the little ones, it just reminded me of how much society has changed. You were talking at first, they're so respectful, and then after a few years, they come in and they're using curse words and everything else. I mean, how did you respond? How do you adapt, and how does that make you feel when you would see how much things had changed and in many ways for the worst?
Well, uh, it, when I left Copeland and when it went to Josie, I was a little nervous, but I was nervous every year on the first day of school from this from 1982, just because I was hoping and praying that I could get that relationship going with them without scaring them to death, but being firm also. So when I got to high school, I was a little jittery, but by the end of the first day, it was so pleasant because all I've ever done my first week or so is get to know my students, get to know, do little icebreakers before it, spend a little time each day getting to know them. And once you find out about your students, you can pretty much work with them. And then you let them know what you expect. I let them know day one, week one, they would never, ever, ever hear me curse. And I couldn't make them not curse, but I'm going to ask the same of them. And I rarely, if they did slip up, it was, sorry, Miss Cofer. So I appreciated that. I know, and because they some students use that's all they know. That's just part of their regular language. They don't mean anything. They don't mean anything against you. You can't take things like that personal in a classroom because it's not personal.
So do you think that it was just so normal to them that they did not realize that that was inappropriate?
Right. Because the people that they are around you mostly are doing the same things. And it's just it's so, it's accepted so easily by most people. But once a student respects you, they won't do those kind of things around you. At least they didn't when I left in 14. I don't know now, but I have subbed a little and I do the same thing. I hadn't subbed since 2020, but I would go in there, give the assignment, see if anyone had questions, I told them what I expected, let them know that I knew I could not make them do anything, but this is what I'm asking. And it for the most part it went pretty well. Pretty well.
Okay.
And I would specifically say I don't curse and I'd appreciate if you don't.
Okay. Did the parents ever say anything to you when they found out that you were telling these kids, hey, this is appropriate, this is not appropriate?
No, that's the thing. I always see one thing I did every year for 32 years between the first day of school and Labor Day, I called every parent on my roster and I introduced myself. I told them what I expected and I asked them what they expected. I was an open book, told them to feel free to call me. I would do the same. And 98% of those parents
Mhm.
really bought into that, and they knew I meant it. And so if I called a parent for something bad, they were just as nice as if I called for something that wasn't so pleasant. So they didn't. I rarely had that. Not once in a while, I have someone that just wasn't about the discipline and believed everything their child said, but it never got. Never did I have a ugly experience with a parent that just escalated to something bad.
Well, that's good. That's probably because they did recognize that one, you had tried to establish some relationship with them from the beginning, and also because they understood that you had the best interest of the child at heart. So yeah, that's a wonderful thing. So it's all about building those relationships with your parents. So tell me about, there's something in your book at the very end. You have a list of things that I think they're do's and don'ts. Let me make sure I got the right heading because yeah, Cheryl's top suggestions. One of them is stay out of the teacher's lounge. You can tell people to do that.
You know what? My mother told me that because so much happen, just like students get into mess, teachers can too, and you can't be discussing other folks' children with other people, So it was just safer for me to stay in my room because first of all, you really don't have time to sit in the lounge. There's teachers have so much responsibility. You almost feel guilty when you're in the lounge. You go in the lounge to wash your hands, use the restroom, get back to work. Because it's enough to do. It's enough to do rather than sit. What are you going to do in the lounge? Sit and talk. My students would often say, Miss Cofer, you don't ever sit down. I say, I came to work. I hope you all came to work too. Yeah. So that was just that's something my mother told me. And I think she just thought it would be safer. Stay in your classroom. Do your work.
Now, now where did Miss Greer teach?
My mother started off at ICA, Immaculate Conception School.
Uh-huh.
Later went to she went to Morgan Road. No, she went to Glen Hills Elementary and then Morgan Road Middle School.
Okay. All righty. For those people out there, some of y'all probably would talk about Mrs. Greer as well.
My sister was my sister was lucky enough to start her first few years at Morgan Road with my mother because by that time the rules had gotten a little slacker just a few years later, and they were missing a math teacher at the beginning of the year, and the day before school started, the principal asked my mother, "Didn't your daughter major in math? Is she working?" And they got to work at Morgan Road together.
So you're from a family of educators.
Yes.
And as you just think about that, do you advise young people now to go into education? If a 20-year-old walked up to you and said, Ms. Cofer, I'm thinking about majoring in education and teaching school, what advice would you tell them to do it since it is so much different from what it used to be?
I would, because I loved it so. And I know there's a way, I just know there's a way to reach those students. There's still those teachers out there that love their students and have their best interest at heart. And these students need somebody that cares. Now, I feel that the cell phones have really made a big difference in the classroom. I don't know what they can do about that, because the parents really feel like they need them, and I may have would feel the same way if my kids were in school. But I do know that they're being abused by the kids. There's a time for them, and there's a time when they shouldn't be on them. And when that's something I saw when I was subbing that I didn't like, because they just have their phones out all day, and it's a distraction. You know.
Okay. So you got, in terms of changes, you got the drug use from the parents. I know you focus a good bit of that on that in the book. You talked about how the kids will come in and say, my mama's on the rock
Yes.
and that sort of thing. I mean, I can't imagine how do you even react to that?
That was in the 80s. The rock was new. I didn't even know what the child was talking about at first. And it just broke my heart, because this child hadn't seen her parent for a while. She was with her grandparent, and she told me that, and it just broke my heart. It just makes you want to hold them a little more tighter, and now it's those kids, they don't know the pre-crack world. And then the pandemic, after crack, we really saw a change in students. You saw that child that really seemed like they didn't have as much of a conscience. you know you used prior to that, I could say, you're going to get a B or C in conduct this week if you don't behave. And they said, "Oh, please don't tell my mama." Just a few years later, after crack was out for a while, you say that, and they said, "So I'm not scared of my mama." And then a little bit later, you tell them something like that, and they'll say, "Me and my mama ain't like me and my mama ain't like this." You know. However, some of those high schoolers would be faking you, because they thought that you wouldn't call their mothers. And you do have some great parents out there also, because I call parents at high school, and I call parents in elementary school. Heard somebody on TV say, I was telling, because I wanted the best for them. And those parents usually responded well.
Thank you so much for that. So you would encourage folks to go into teaching if that's something that they want to do.
They need them. They need them. But
Yeah.
they realize it's a hard job, but it's so, so worth it. And
Mhm.
this book could really help. My job was hard, but it was just hard the first month. After
Mhm.
that, because after you get your rules established, the classroom runs itself. Your kids know to come in, what to do, and to get started. And if it was a day for me to teach a new thing, they knew that you're gonna teach, and then we're gonna practice what we learn.
Structure was a major part of what you had to establish. And it seems like these days there are a lot of kids that are not used to any of that type of structure.
They're not. But it's always, I'm about to ask you a question. Do you
I
watch
mean,
Abbott Elementary?
you know what? I've never watched a full episode all the way through. I just watched the little YouTube videos.
But the
YouTube, and there'll be YouTube shorts and that sort of stuff. So I'm familiar with the
it was a
characters.
good show. And then there's the teacher on there with my name, Cheryl Rao, and that was me. I was so serious. But you always got that teacher that's so serious that's gonna go the extra mile. But then what the new teachers have to realize is if you just go that little extra mile, next month your job will be so easy. But they don't want to call parents. It's just and I understand because the school system has so many gives the teachers so many duties and responsibilities. You never get a break. You know, they say you have like 30 minutes for planning. Well, elementary has 30, they used to have 30 minutes for planning. What is that? Because it takes you 5 minutes to take the kids to PE. You take you five more to go get them. That's not time to plan. And then in high school, when you have a planning, they usually give you a duty. Well, you need to go to lunch duty or you need to do hall duty. So you never, it's a hard job, but it's so rewarding. It is so rewarding. I often tell my teachers when I do get to go speak to teachers, um, Mary J and Beyonce, they don't have anything on us as far as our popularity. I can see a student right now that I taught 10 years ago, and they recognize me and they act like I'm the star of the world. And when I say that to teachers, they fall out because they feel the same. Students love to run into their old teachers. You probably love to run into some of your old teachers. I do too.
One of the biggest, most rewarding things I have done over the last few years is that I was asked to speak at the funeral of a former teacher. Yeah, I was the representative of her 35 years or so in education. So and that was Mrs. Mamie Cummings Dunn, who taught me at Richmond Academy. So yes, yes, yeah, I do. I look upon my former teachers with great admiration. There is one more thing before we close out about the book that I want to mention. I'm just reading along about your career in education and some about your family. And then you tell us that you met your husband at Monday Night Wrestling.
Yeah,
So
I did.
it's an Augusta thing, you
Yeah,
know.
it's Monday.
Monday Night Wrestling was a thing. That's where everybody was for their entertainment. And you probably aren't the only person who met your husband at Monday Night Wrestling.
That is too funny. Yeah, I did, and I always tease him that he almost missed out because my cousins and I would always go to Monday Night Wrestling. We would catch the bus from our neighborhood, go to downtown, get off at the Bell, and they thought I needed a boyfriend. So they introduced me to one of my cousin's friend's cousin. And he took one look at me and said, she looks like a little girl, and never called. So I I was like, oh well, I dodged a bullet because I wasn't interested in a boyfriend anyway. And who do I meet the first day when I get to Josie High School? Reginald. So that was like
Josie, in what grade? What grade were you when you started,
ninth
Josie?
grade. I
In
started.
ninth grade. Okay.
I didn't go. I went to a Catholic school, so private school. So I didn't leave ICA until I got out of eighth grade, and we ended up in the ninth grade math class, and the rest is history.
And the rest is history. All right. But it started at the Bell Auditorium.
Started at the Bell Auditorium. Yes, and he remembered me. I said, "Well, you didn't ever call." He said, "You look like a little girl." I want to say, "Well, you look like a little boy," but it worked out the way it was supposed to.
The the time. Is there anything else you want to share? Of course, we want you to tell everybody again the name of the book and where people can purchase it.
The name of my book is Lessons Learned, and it's about the many, many, many lessons that my students taught me. And it's available on Amazon. If you like, you can go to my website. I have a website, CherylCofer.com, and it will take you straight to the book as well as display pictures of where I've spoken at some schools to some teachers about my book.
Okay. Thank you. It look different from mine. If you can see mine.
Yes, yes. You know what? My husband hated that cover, so he insisted on me putting my picture on the book. But it's the same book. It's the same
Because yeah,
book.
mine has the teacher apple on it.
Yes, that was my idea. The picture. I don't need a picture, but he wanted me to do that, and I did that in his honor. And it's the same book, but it's now I have a picture book with my picture on it.
You so much for being a guest on Local Matters. Anytime you come on the show, you become a part of the Local Matters family. So now you're officially a part of the family.
Thank you. It has been my pleasure, and I appreciate you thinking enough to invite me.
You're very, very welcome.
Thanks.
I certainly hope you enjoyed that conversation with Cheryl Gordon Cofer. We ask you, as always, to follow us on Facebook and Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And please make sure you have those notifications turned on so that you receive notice when we drop new episodes. Also, our guest next week is Commissioner Stacey Pulliam. So please join us for that awesome conversation.